On that cold February night, or should I say cold February night, I was freezing at the bus stop on the highway, waiting for the last 104 bus for 11:40 p.m., which was going to my neighborhood. The shuttle bus was to appear in about 5 minutes, so, in order not to freeze to death, I took a cigarette from the cigarette case and greedily smoked. The hot smoke helps to slow down the process of freezing in our Siberian frosts. A puff, another puff. I throw away the hollow cardboard mouthpiece and see a minibus pulling out of a perpendicular street. I raise my hand and step into the cabin, taking some change for the fare out of my pocket. The bus was empty, as always at this time. Only in the back sat some guy, and in the middle of the cabin dozed in headphones woman 45 years old. I followed her example, took out my headphones and dozed off, as it took me 40 minutes to get to my neighborhood and another 20 minutes to walk home. Suddenly I woke up from a small jolt. I looked around and was genuinely petrified. All the seats except the one at the end were occupied, and next to me was some grandmother. In my head, a lot of thoughts were mixed at once, like, how come there are so many passengers at such a late hour? Nevertheless, I decided to give up the seat to my grandmother and myself to sit down, because the older people need help. My grandmother could hardly get on the top seat at the end of the bus. As I began to climb up, the old lady immediately pushed me, and I fell back down. She said with a hint of anger in her voice, "Sit, grandson, you have a long way to go, while I'm going out soon." I was brought up well, so I made a few more attempts to give up my seat. The reaction was the same. Apparently, my grandmother was so uncomfortable that she gives way, that with force, atypical for people with such a complex, tried to persuade me to sit down and not bother. Eventually, I got tired of sitting myself and stood up very sharply. My grandmother clung to me tightly, trying to sit me down, but I put her in the chair myself and stepped back, decided to stand. The passengers began to look at me with angry and prickly eyes. The strange thing was that the bus was going nowhere, even though I was supposed to be rushing through the expanse of Kemerovo. There were no stops, no landmarks, just woods and fields along the sides of the road. Then I began to realize that something was going on. Lots of passengers at this late hour, an incomprehensible road, a strange granny. As I was thinking about it, all the passengers got up and headed for the exit. And, perhaps, to me, too. I was standing near the exit. The passengers surrounded me, huddled together on the platform, and some girl came up to me and said, "Here we are, get ready to leave." At that moment a blue plate flashed by outside the window, the kilometrage, which, thanks to the lights on the bus, I could see. It read, Cemetery 1. To say that I was cold is nothing to say. I got scared. My gaze fell on the emergency hammer used to break glass in the event of an accident. I thought to myself, whatever happens, this is some kind of damn thing, we have to get out of here. And I hit the glass with all my might, which shattered to pieces. At that moment the bus was turning left. In the light of the minibus's lights, I read the inscription Cemetery 0.2 on a blue arrow, and without a moment's hesitation, I jumped out the window. Instead of the shock I was expecting, my head whirled, turned white, and I flew upward, then fell on something soft. I opened my eyes and saw that I was in a hospital room with 2 IVs. It turned out that I had been in an accident at the entrance to Kemerovo. A shuttle bus had collided with an intercity bus, and both vehicles had gone off a 4-meter-high cliff. 2 minutes later a fire broke out. I was the only survivor. The passengers on the intercity bus must have been on their way to the cemetery with me. And that strange old lady didn't want to let me out. I don't know why she was acting like that. I was found at the scene of the accident, 10 meters away from the bus. I had numerous injuries and fractures, but I survived. I was clutching a red hammer in my hand. Mount Eshevaya is located to the east of the main Ural Ridge, 8 kilometers from the city of Kirovgrad in the Sverdlovsk region. And it is famous for the fact that there is a great skiing base, wherein winter holidaymakers from all over the region come to. Here you will find skis, Snowboards, bagels, Finnish sleighs, snowmobiles, and cozy cafes with hot meals and fragrant coffee. In general, everyone can find entertainment to his, her liking here. When I was about 14 years old, my parents and I decided to go to Ejave. At that time, my dad was fond of mountain skiing. My mom just wanted some new experiences, and I really wanted to go bagel skiing. We took a group with us and went. We spent the whole day on the mountain, very tired, but a lot of vivid impressions. In the evening, when it got dark, we went home. Our way goes along the Swarovski path, which begins in Yekaterinburg and goes north for about 360 kilometers. After passing the highway Kirovgrad, Neviansk, we left the Swarovski tract and drove off. The road was going to be long. Me, Mom, Dad, and my sister were in the front, and 2 more cars with our friends in the back. It was quite dark outside, and the road was in the middle of the forest, which in some places was replaced by the remnants of the mountains, through which the route was laid. There was almost no light, so we did not drive hard. We were in the right lane, and then a dark 9 overtook our car on the side of the road on the right. Mom flinched. Dad, who was behind the wheel, cursed. My sister and I immediately started looking out from behind the front seats. The 9, quickly overtaking our car and driving 15 meters ahead, just vanished into thin air. There were no more cars in front of us, not a hint of taillights. There was the 9, and in a few seconds the road was empty. We, of course, were shocked, sat, wondered, and drove on. On the way, we called our friends who had been following us, and they said they hadn't seen anything. We drove another 20 minutes. I got bored and sat in the gap between the front seats, talking to my mom and looking out the windshield. I see, again, someone standing on the curb on the right, well, just the outline of a person. I still think, who can at this time in a deserted place to walk? Ahead and back for a few kilometers there is nothing but forest. We are quickly approaching a dark figure. I wanted to draw my parents' attention to the strange man, but did not have time. He ran right out onto the road and stood in front of the car. And then I could see that it was a grandmother, an ordinary grandmother, just in a very dirty and torn cloak. I yelled to my dad, pull over, man. He hesitates a little, but he presses the brakes. The car starts to turn around. The road is slippery, and we go sideways on this old lady. I'm in a panic. My parents are in shock. My friends behind me, thank God, managed to slow down and not crash into us. It takes me so long to explain now, but back then it took literally 10 seconds. Finally the car stops. I look around in all the windows, no grandmother, and we hooked it with the side of the car. Parents demand an explanation. Friends poured out of the car and also asked what happened. I begin to explain. All walk along the road. Look at the side of the road and over the fence. Well, she's nowhere. And when we hit it with the side of the car, there was no knock, no bump, nothing at all. In general, the stars, I got a good one. The rest of the way silent. My mother only sat there indignant that first the 9 and then I made up some old ghost woman. But I'm sure I was not imagining it. At that time I was a mature enough person, would not just yell like crazy. I knew I could create an accident. By the way, it's good that the road was not busy. There were no cars on the road except for us, and who knows how it could have turned out. I could have caused such an accident, but we got off lightly. A little story from life that happened to me about 2 years ago, when we were returning from a trip to Kaluga, framed in text. It really happened, but maybe it was just a figment of an excited fantasy. Faintly visible, sparsely planted trees and denser undergrowth flashed outside the window. Music played softly in the cabin, only slightly drowning out the sounds outside the car. I was sitting to the driver's right, with my forehead sleepily against the glass. To be more precise, from the driver, my girlfriend was driving the car, as was I, at times, covering her eyes for a moment. "Can I drive from here?" I asked, and all I got in response was a couple of shakes of my head from side to side, which apparently meant no. "Go ahead. You're already sleepy. It's 2 in the morning." I said no. "You're without a license," she replied sharply. "Suit yourself. Here, at least take a few sips." I handed her an open bottle of mineral water. and after waiting for her to take a few sips, I took it back. "Now I have to pee something," she threw on her face strongly. Turning on the right turn signal, we stopped on the unlit dirt side of the road. I pressed the parking light button and got out of the car to get some air, too. The girl didn't go far, but crouched right next to the car. I looked around and breathed in the cool night air of the suburbs. About 20 seconds later, another car with 2 round headlights stopped 30 meters behind us. It seemed to me it was an ancient Copic. As soon as the car stopped, a man got out of it. At least judging by his height and build, which shone in the headlights, it was a man. At first I had the thought that he had stopped to help us, because anything can happen on the road, so he decided to ask if we were okay. He moved towards us, quietly, slowly, silently, as if not attracting attention. I did not even hear the slamming of the door of his car. After a few seconds I got a better look at him. It was getting cold and I hurried up the girl. "Hurry up, dear." Thank God she had time to finish her business. We got into the car and drove away. My heart remained in my heels until we entered the apartment and locked the iron door behind us. It had been a long time, and I still hadn't told her about what had happened that night. How I could see the bat in the man's hand in the dim headlights. How we got into the car, and just 5 meters away he stopped and looked at us. How I looked back for a few seconds, and he calmly put the bat on his shoulder, turned around, and the black silhouette of the unknown man staggered back to his car.